Shout out to BWB, man. BWB. Shout out to BWB, man. You know what I'm saying? Bandwagon Bus, man. Shout out to Bandwagon Bus. Thank y'all for coming. BWB, baby. Shout out to TOP Sports Club, baby.
What up, guys? What's going on? It's Harry Billion. Forget the intro. Skip the intro. I'm just going straight at it. Coach Prime says that he wants to win it all. If Coach Prime was to go to the national championship, he may face a Georgia and Alabama or face one of the SEC teams. Now, we don't know for sure, but we know from history, like they always like to go to history, what happened last year. We know that the SEC is very strong. I don't take nothing away from the SEC, but we know that these things come in cycles. You know what I'm saying? So SEC is on right now. They've been on for a while. The Pac-12 is also known as the Champions League or the Champions Conference or whatever. So the Pac-12 had their chance. If we were to go to the national championship game, we would face either a Georgia, Alabama, or one of these teams. Right here in front of you, you're looking at the Georgia schedule. So this is what I want to do. For all of you football heads, okay? For all of you football heads, can we please do a match-up? Are we saying that all of these teams, Coach Prime and his Buffaloes would not even be able to face? So the UT Martin, Ball State, how will we do with UT Martin for you football heads? Obviously, you guys know I'm very transparent. I tell you guys, I'm new to this college football. I'm not that versed with all of the teams. After this year, though, I'm definitely going to be on my game. I'm going to watch a lot of college football. I'm going to know these teams. I'm going to know their strengths, their weaknesses, and I'm going to do a lot of analysis and stuff like that. So I would definitely be adding more teams to my coverage next year. Right now, it's just Colorado. I want to know for you football guys, you guys who always want to debate us in the daggone comments, let us know, telling us we can't see no SEC teams and blah, 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 blah. Would you guys say this is an easy schedule for Georgia? Pound for pound, the people that we play and the teams that they play, how do we stack up? Can we beat a Ball State, South Carolina, UAB, Auburn, Kentucky, Vanderbilt, Florida, Missouri, Ole Miss, Tennessee, Georgia Tech? People saying, oh, Colorado has a very tough schedule. Our first 5 games are very tough. We got very tough opponents, and then maybe we might get a break or so. Maybe not the first 5 games, because I'm sure Colorado State is not the toughest team that we're going to face. I think when people say we're going to win 2 or 3 games, I think Colorado State is one of those games that we might win. So I wouldn't say Colorado State, but definitely the Oregon, the USC, everybody's saying we got a tough schedule. Now, obviously, I always say that conversation is going to change because I feel like it's tough to grade us, but if we beat them, then it's not tough. That's my heartache. That's the thing that I keep waiting to happen. I know the conversation will change some way, in some shape or form. The conversation is going to change. It's either going to be the Pac-12 is not that strong of a conference. It might change in that way, or it just might be, okay, so all of these teams are rebuilding anyway. So Colorado got Sal Cincinnati, who's a Nick Saban. I mean, I'm just kind of letting you guys know the narratives that may come up once we start to win. Because then you got to keep in mind, talking heads, we need something to talk about. So we need something else. We can't concede and just be like, Colorado, oh yeah, my gosh, Harry B was right all this time. My goodness, he's a prophet. Gosh, he knows so much. He's so astute. No way. There's no way. Nobody's ever going to give that up. And vice versa. If we start losing, it's going to be, oh, look at Harry B. This dude don't know nothing about no football. He don't know what he's talking about. Everybody's going to come from my head. Blah, blah, blah. I'm still going to be sitting here laughing. I'm still going to be having fun because they're thinking that that's what I'm hung up on. They don't even know that I'm hung up on life. I'm hung up on the present. My 2 feet, where they're at. Being present. Understanding where I'm at right now. Enjoying my moment. Whatever comes later on, it's icing on the cake. Okay? If we win, we win. I'm not trying to concede right now and trying to hold myself to some lower standard just so I can have something to fall back on. That's not what I'm doing. I'm just saying, like, look, it's college football. I'm going to enjoy this process. I want to know from you guys who've been in the game for so long, so you guys who know so much, you're always pretending like y'all know more than everybody else. Even if you've been in the game long enough, a lot of y'all be talking that old talk like nothing changes. Like nobody can beat anybody. Like I don't understand. Any given Saturday, somebody can get beat. Anybody can catch an L on a Saturday, but it's not like the NFL. It's definitely not like the NFL because there are schools that have more money. Their resources are a little bit better and they're going to get the bigger players. They're going to get the faster players. The talent pool is not the same. Right now, what I want to do is I want to take a look at how these teams that they're going to play in 2023, how did these teams fare out last year in 2022? We're going to look at each team's schedule from last year. We're going to look at the wins and losses. That's going to give a lot of us who really don't know, who didn't follow these teams last year or who haven't been following college football, it's going to give us a little bit more insight. If you look at the different scores, you can build your own narrative based on the wins and the losses. Like how bad did they lose? How many points did they lose by? So you can start understanding a little bit more about how these teams stack up with other teams that are in this conference, each team that Georgia is playing. So let's go ahead and take a look at that right now. Okay, guys, so let's go ahead and look at the UT Martin schedule from last year. All right, overall, they were 7-4. Their percentage was 636. At home, they were 4-1. At Western Illinois, 42-25, they won. Missouri State, 35-30, they lost that game. Boise State, they lost 30-7. At Lindenwood, they won 56-26. At Tennessee Tech, 45-28, they won that game. At Murray State, they won 45-16. And then at Tennessee, they took that L, 65-24. And then their next game was Houston Christian. They won 52-28. And then their next game was Kennesaw State. They lost 44-27. And then finally, we have Tennessee State. They beat Tennessee State 20-3. All right, guys, so let's go ahead and look at Ball State's schedule from last year. Overall, they were 5-7. Tennessee, they took the L 10-59. At Western Michigan, they took the L 30-37. At Murray State, 31-0, they won. At Georgia Southern, lost 23-34. Northern Illinois, they won 44-38. Central Michigan, they won 17-16. At UConn, they won 25-21. Eastern Michigan, they took the L 16-20. And then they went to Kent State and they won at Kent State 27-20. They played Toledo next and they took the L at Toledo 21-28. Their next game was Ohio. They lost at Ohio 18-32. Miami of Ohio was 17-18. They took the L. All right, so next up is South Carolina. Let's take a look at their 2022 football schedule. How did they fare out last year? Their next game is September the 2nd at 7:30 p.m. to play North Carolina to open up the season. Okay, so overall they were 8-5. Their percentage was a .615. Conference was 4-4. They had a one-game losing streak. At home they were 5-2. Away, they were 3-2. Let's take a closer look. All right, Georgia State, they won 35-14. Next game was Arkansas. They lost 30-44. Against Georgia, they obviously lost because Georgia was undefeated. Gotta keep saying that. 7-48. Against Charlotte, they won 56-20 on September the 24th. The next game was South Carolina State. They won 50-10. Kentucky, they won 24-14. Texas A&M, they won 30-24. Missouri, they took that L 10-23. Vanderbilt, they won 38-27. Against the Florida Gators, they took that L 38-6. That was November the 12th. Against Tennessee, they won 63-38. Next game was against Clemson. They won 31-30. And then this was the Tax Slayer Gator Bowl. They played Notre Dame and they took the L 38-45. Notre Dame won the Tax Slayers Gator Bowl. They got some weird names for these bowls, boy. I'm telling you. So that's how they fared out last year. Moving on to the next one. Let's go ahead and look at the UAB schedule from last year. They have 77 more days, 4 hours for their next game. Their overall schedule was 7-6. They were .538 conference. They were 4-4, 500 in the conference. At home, they were 5-1, 1-5 away. Alabama A&M, they won 59-0. Next game was against Liberty. They lost 14-21. At Georgia Southern, they won 35-21. With Rice, they lost 24-28. Next game was Middle Middle Tennessee, they won 41-14. Conference USA game. Against Charlotte, they won 34-20. Against WKU, they lost 17-20. Florida Atlantic, they lost 17-24. Next game was UTSA, they lost 38-44 in overtime, double overtime. North Texas, they won 41-21. And then at LSU, they lost 10-41. Louisiana Tech, they won 37-27. They made a bowl game. That was the hometown Lenders Bahamas Bowl. They won 24-20. Miami of Ohio, they beat them. Let's go ahead and look at the Auburn schedule. All right, so they played 12 games. September the 3rd, they played Mercer. They beat Mercer 42-16. San Jose State, they beat San Jose State 24-16. September 17th, they played Penn State. They lost. They only scored 12 points to Penn State's 41. Missouri, that was an SEC game. They won that 17-14. And then they played LSU and they lost 17-21. Next game was October the 8th. They played Georgia. They lost 42-10. So Georgia be giving people a problem for sure. All right, and then they played Ole Miss. They lost 34-48. Arkansas, they lost 27-41. And then they played Mississippi State. They lost 33-39. That one was a little closer. November 12th, they played Texas A&M. They beat them 13-10. Conference USA Western Kentucky, they won 41-17. And then they played on November the 26th. They played Alabama and they caught that L 27-49. How did it fare out with the SEC teams? They won 2 games in the SEC. All right, guys, so let's go ahead and look at the University of Kentucky. Overall, there were 7-6. In the SEC, there were 3-5. Let's go ahead and look at the schedule. We have Miami of Ohio, the Redhawks. They won that game 37-13. We have the Florida Gators. So Kentucky beat the Florida Gators 26-16. That game was on ESPN. Then we got the Youngstown State Penguins. They won that game 31-0. And then the next game was NIU Huskies on ESPN2. They won that game 31-23. Their next game was Ole Miss. They lost 22-19. South Carolina Gamecocks, they lost that game 24-14. Next, they played Mississippi State Bulldogs. They won that game 27-17. They were off. They had a bye week. And then their next game was Tennessee Volunteers. They lost 44-6. At Missouri Tigers, they won 21-17. Their next game was Vanderbilt Commodores. They lost 24-21. The Georgia Bulldogs, 16-6. They lost. That game was on CBS. And then the Louisville Cardinals, they won 26-13. They got the Trans-Perfect Music City Bowl. So they lost in their bowl game 21-0. That was the Trans-Perfect Music City Bowl versus the Iowa Hawkeyes. That's how they fared out last year. So it looks like they kind of kept the game close with the Georgia Bulldogs last year. To go 16-6 against the national champs, I would say they are definitely a decent team. All right, guys, so the next team that we got is Vanderbilt. So let's look at their schedule. How did they fare out last year? Overall, they were 5-7. In the SEC, they were 2-6. Let's take a closer look. The Hawaii Rainbow Warriors, they won 63-10. Then they have the Elon Phoenix. I'm about to say Elon Musk. Anyway, they won 42-31. And then they played Wake Forest Demon Deacons. 45-25, they lost to Wake Forest. NIU Huskies, they won 38-28. That was at the Huskies Stadium in DeKalb, Illinois. Alabama Crimson Tide, they lost 55-3. Sheesh. Lordy. Alabama put that whooping on them. And then they had an off week. The next week they came back and took another L. They just couldn't get over that L they took at Alabama. Ole Miss Rebels give them 52-28. Lost that game. Oh, and it just continued. Then they got the Georgia Bulldogs. Georgia was like, nah, you scored on the last 2 games. We're going to make sure that you don't score again. That's it, okay? They gave them 55-0. Georgia was not playing that game. And then next they played the Missouri Tigers. They lost 17-14. And then they had, how many off weeks did they have? I mean, if you're losing that much, you probably need 2 off weeks. They was like, nah, bro, we need to take a break. This is not looking good. Let's take a another break. They took another week off because it was just way too much. They came back to take another L. South Carolina Gamecocks gave them 38 to their 27. And then they caught a little break when they played Kentucky Wildcats. They won 24-21, and they beat the Florida Gators 31-24. Their last game was the Tennessee Volunteers 56-0. Sheesh. Man, that was not a good season for them. 5-7 overall. It's starting to make a little bit more sense if you look at some of these teams. I mean, it's obvious the SEC teams are very strong teams. I understand that. Let's move on to the next one. The next school we got is going to be the Florida Gators. Let's go ahead and look at their 2022 schedule. So the Florida Gators overall record was 6-7. Conference was 3-5. Let's go ahead and take a closer look. They played the Utah Utes 29-26. They won. Kentucky, they took that L 16-26. And then they played South Florida. They won 31-28. They played Tennessee and took that L 33-38. Tennessee seemed like a pretty good team just based on their track record. All right, then they played Eastern Washington and won 52-17. Versus Missouri, they won 24-17. That's an SEC game. LSU, they took that L 35-45. Georgia Bulldogs, obviously if Georgia's undefeated during that season, number 1 Georgia, they took the L 20-42. Texas A&M was an SEC game. They won 41-24. They played South Carolina. They won 38-6. Vanderbilt, they lost 24-31. And I believe this is Coach Prime's team or former school. The Florida State Seminoles, 38-45. Seminoles, that's my high school best friend's favorite team. Florida State Seminoles. I can never hear my ears about the Florida Seminoles for years. They took that L, though, Dex. All right, and then they play the Oregon State. They took that L 3-30. Oregon State is not a game, boy. They were playing, but they weren't playing around. That gives us a little bit more insight. Let's go ahead and go to the next team. Let's go ahead and go to Missouri. Let's go ahead and look at Missouri's schedule. Their 2022 schedule. How they fare out. Make sure you hit that subscribe button if this is a little intriguing for you, please. You know what I'm saying? I'm putting in that work, so if you appreciate the work I'm putting in, go ahead and hit that subscribe button for me, and let's grow this channel to get a little bigger. The bigger we get, the better the content. You know what I'm saying? What I'm saying? They fared out overall 6-7. Their percentage was a .462. Conference wins was 3-5. At home, they were 5-2. Away, 1-4. Let's take a closer look. This is brought to you by TLP Sports Club. All right, so they had a Spirit Day, Louisiana Tech. They won 52-24. Then they had Kansas State. They took that L 42-12. And then they went to Abilene Christian. They won 34-17. Then they took the L at Auburn, 17-14. They lost in overtime. Obviously, they lost to Georgia. Georgia was undefeated that season. 26-22. That was pretty close. They went to Gainesville, Florida, and took that L 24-17. Florida won that game. And then their homecoming game versus Vanderbilt, they won 17-14. ADs usually schedule their home game to be like an easy team. The next game was in South Carolina, Columbia, South Carolina. They won 23-10. They took an L at UK, that's Kentucky, 21-17. Took another L at Tennessee, 66-24. That was a tough day for them. Then they played New Mexico State. They won 45-14. Arkansas and won 29-27. And I guess based on their record, they went to a bowl game, the Union Home Mortgage Gasparilla Bowl. They took the L at 27-17 versus Wake Forest. Okay, guys, so now we're looking at Ole Miss schedule, their 2022 schedule. Obviously, these wins and losses is not necessarily going to let us know whether we can beat them or we'll catch that L. It's just to kind of give us more insight on who they beat, who beat them. We can get more understanding of how strong they are. Because obviously, people who are watching or listening, this is either your team or you are familiar with these teams and you've seen them before. But again, a lot of us are not familiar with this whole college football thing. So we don't really know how these teams fared out. So this is kind of giving us more insight. If we were to play one of these teams, how can you see us faring out based on their wins and losses, based on who they're playing? Because a lot of the things that we always hear is that we can't hang with none of these teams. Obviously, if we have a tough schedule, if we're supposed to have a tough schedule, then how do we fare off against these SEC teams? The Southeastern Conference is currently the reigning conference when it comes to championship. That's why I wanted to do this video, because this is like the measuring stick. This is what everybody measures up to. You can't beat Georgia. You can't beat Alabama. You can't beat any of these SEC teams. So who are they beating? Who are they losing to? Et cetera, et cetera. How do we fare out? Because if we're going to start thinking championship, then we got to start thinking outside of the Pac-12. We got to get a little bit more insight. So that's why I'm doing this video. Now we got Ole Miss. Their overall schedule, they did pretty well. They were over 500. Overall, they were 8-5. Their percentage was 0.6. Conference, they were 4-4. Percentage in the conference was obviously 500 because it's 4-4. They had a 4-game losing streak. At home, they were 5-2. Away, they were 3-2. Let's take a closer look. This is brought to you by TLP Sports Club. Press subscribe to get in the club. Okay, so they played Troy and won 28-10. Their next game was Central Arkansas. They won 59-3. Man, that field goal saved them. All right, their next game was against Georgia Tech. They won 42-0. Put that spanking on Georgia Tech. Tulsa, all right, that's Pastor Michael Todd's home. They won 35-27. Kentucky, they won 22-19. Next game, they won against Vanderbilt. 52-28. Auburn, they won 48-34. LSU, they lost 20-45. Texas A&M, 31-28. They won. Their next game was against Alabama. They lost 24-30. That was a close game. Arkansas, they lost 27-42. Mississippi State, they lost 22-24. That was a really close game. And then they went to the Tax Act Texas Bowl and took a L, 25-42. I'm going to save y'all the whole Georgia situation because they went undefeated and they won the national champ. They were the national champ. So we're not going to do Georgia just in case you're like, well, can you please do Georgia? I'm not doing no Georgia. Stop playing with me. They went undefeated and they won the national championship. That's it. End of story. All you Georgia fans, I'm not doing it. Y'all think you're about to come flex on this? Nah, nope. Okay, guys, so our next team is going to be Tennessee. All right, let's look at their 2022 football schedule. All right, Tennessee, their overall was 11-2. Their percentage was a .85. Oh, man, good team, I can see. In conference, they went 6-2, .75. At home, they were 7-0, perfect. Away, they were 3-2. Let's take a closer look. This is brought to you by TLP Sports Club. Hit that subscribe button and get in the club. All right, they played Ball State and won 59-10. Next game was against Pitt. Pat Narduzzi. Pat Narduzzi took that L, homie. 34-27. That wasn't too bad. Pat Narduzzi, he can coach. We know who you are now, Pat Narduzzi. Every time we see that P with that I and then those two T's crossing over, we know it's you, Pat. I love it. This is how rivalries are created, boy. I'll tell you, boy. This is how rivalries start. This is why we love sports, man. All right, Akron. Akron took an L, 63-6. That was a tough day for Akron, boy. Sheesh. Lolly. The Florida Gators took the L, 38-33. LSU took that L, boy, 40-13. Sheesh. For all of you LSUs, look at the gold and purple and all of that. Yeah, I see y'all in the comments. Y'all LSU took an L, 40-13 to Tennessee. Is that how we living? Is that what it is, LSU? Juwan Johnson? You better go back to quarterback because they need help. Y'all gonna have to sub in Juwan. He gonna have to leave that DB line and go back to quarterback. If something happened, boy, y'all cut that L. All fun and games, people. All fun and games. Okay, this is sports. Enjoy your moment. Alabama. Nope. Don't tell me this. This is not the Alabama, is it? 52-49. Caught that L. Is that the Alabama? I'm having too much fun with this. So Tennessee's a problem, I can see. Okay. The narrative is starting to create itself. Tennessee might give us a slight problem there, huh? Sheesh. UT Martin. Okay. They beat UT Martin 65-24. Tennessee is not a joke, boy. They beat Kentucky 44-6. Of course, obviously, if they play Georgia, Georgia is undefeated. So 13-27. If they just win maybe one more game, they can get the nod to go to the national chip game. Who knows? Because this is a tough schedule right here. All right, so then they went to Missouri and won 66-24. If you were to create a narrative, what narrative are you guys seeing? Go to the comments. Let me know. Based on these wins and losses and how many points these teams are scoring, what are you picking up? If you don't know, because obviously some of y'all know, and I don't want y'all to be all like, oh, they're going to beat y'all. They're going to beat the skits off of y'all and blah, blah, blah. Listen, they're going to mollywop y'all and all that stuff. Listen. listen, I ain't talking about all that. I'm talking about real football talk. And we can have some fun just talking some really good football talk. I'm ready for that kind of talk. Tell me some real football stuff so we can have some fun with it. But what I'm getting, Tennessee is a high-octane team. They score a lot. So that means that their quarterback is really good, and they probably have either a really good run game or everything they do is just throw the ball. Because if you're scoring like 60-something points, that means you're probably throwing the ball a lot. Their air game is probably nice. That's what I'm ascertaining. Again, I'm talking from a point of not knowing from last year. I was not into college football like I am now. I'm just gathering some stuff from just these wins and losses. South Carolina gave them that L 38-63. So then again, that means South Carolina is a nice team. South Carolina is not a team to play with. If Tennessee is whooping everybody like this, and then they come in there in November 19th, they come in there and give one to Tennessee like this, give them 63-38. That was a decisive win. 63-38. It was not like, oh, they had a trick play or something. I don't know. I didn't watch the game, but it looks like South Carolina, I'm ascertaining now, South Carolina is a good team, so that's a team to look out for. Okay, that's good to know. And then they beat Vanderbilt 56-0. They was making sure after that loss to South Carolina, their coach was like, if y'all let them score on this next game, all of y'all are getting off a scholarship. You're going to be eating ramen noodles with sardines, okay? You're not getting no more food from the cafeteria. Stop playing with me. They went in there and let them know we mad. And then the next game, they went and beat Clemson 31-14. So that was the Orange Bowl. Capital One Orange Bowl. They beat Clemson 31-14. So the Orange Bowl is definitely not a pushover bowl. Orange Bowl is one of those New Year's 6 bowl games. If you win one of those bowl games, then your name gets thrown into the pot where they stir everything up. They decide who gets to go to the national title game. It was a toss-up because if they win one more game or they beat Georgia, they're in the title game and Georgia's not. That's what it seems like. That's what it kind of comes down to. And you guys know the narratives that happened. You guys went through the whole, rigmarole of the season. You let me know. What was the narrative at that point? I'm sure there were some upset people who thought maybe Tennessee should have got a shot, but you can't give it to Tennessee when Georgia's undefeated. So that narrative is dead on arrival. You can't give it to somebody who lost 2 games and then the undefeated team is sitting at home watching. That would have been something else, right? Shit. But a lot of people were mad for that TCU anyway. So obviously Georgia's not to play with, but not to say we can't take any of these teams. I'm just saying South Carolina is nothing to play with. Tennessee definitely not to play with. This is primarily for BWB. A lot of Deion Sanders or AKA Coach Prime's constituents, those of us who are here for Coach Prime who don't really know about football for sure. This is mainly for us. I know you guys are like being bored or whatever, so you can just listen to my voice. We're going to be having a podcast real soon where we're going to talk more football stuff. I'm working on that. I got to work it out, but yeah, just to kind of talk more football stuff. So, all right, guys. So, BWB marked Tennessee as a problem. Let's go to the last team, which is going to be Georgia Tech. We're just doing the 2023 schedule. We're not touching 2024. We're just focusing on 2023. All right, guys. So, here's our final team. We are looking at Georgia Tech. They are obviously in the ACC. All right. So, Georgia Tech, their overall was 5-7. This is their 2022 schedule. Theirs don't look as pretty, but we can still go through it. Their first game was Clemson. They lost to Clemson 10-41. Western Carolina, they won 35-17. Ole Miss, they lost 0-42. Next game was at UCF in Orlando, Florida. They lost 10-27. The next game was against Pat Narduzzi's team at Pitt. Georgia Tech was like, Pat Narduzzi, we know you're going to open your big mouth and talk about Coach Prime, so we're going to give you this L. They won 26-21. Sorry, Pat, but you know not to poke the bear. We got allies everywhere. Get it? L-eyes everywhere. Anyway, their next game was against Duke, the Duke Blue Devils. They won 23-10. Please create all your narratives. Put them in the comments. Let me know what you think. What narratives are coming up as I'm reading these L's and these W's. Their next game was against Virginia. It was in Atlanta, Georgia. They lost 9-16. They got on a flight and went to go play Florida State in Tallahassee, Florida. They took that L 16-41. Florida was like, not today. They give them that Tallahassee pain, baby. All right, so the next game was Virginia Tech. They won. They got the W 28-27. Their next game versus Miami, they lost 14-35. Create your narratives. Next game at North Carolina in Chapel Hill. UNCG, what up? Everybody's like, UNCG is not in Chapel Hill. I know, because I went to school there. Oh my goodness. They won at Carolina 21-17. And then their final game was Georgia. Obviously, they took the loss because Georgia was undefeated. Stop playing with me. 14-37. So guys, let me know, what are some of these takeaways that you're having? What comes to mind? How are we going to fare off when it comes to Georgia? Or if we have to meet one of these SEC teams in the national title game based on their wins and their losses. I want to hear what you're thinking. What are your thoughts so far? Who you think is going to be the most problematic? Obviously, Georgia, they went undefeated. Yeah, I mean, this is a Coach Prime team. You know, you put a Coach Prime team out there, we're not coming to lay down for nobody. Tennessee's going to give us a problem. I know South Carolina is going to be a problem. We got confidence in our squad. You know what I'm saying? The Colorado Buffaloes, we like Wu-Tang. Wu-Tang ain't nothing to whoop, 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 if you know what I mean. I feel like any team that Coach Prime plays, we can give them a problem. That's just how I feel. But it's not like I'm off base. It's not like I'm out here just shooting blank shots. I'm not doing that. I can come with legit information because I got to look at each team. Who is UT Martin's quarterback? Who is UT Martin's top wide receiver? Who is their linebackers coach? Who is their Sal Sinceri? You see what I'm saying? That's the type of thing that I like to do. I like to put facts against facts. And then if those facts kind of fare out to the other team, then I'm a big boy. I can take it. I can be like, all right, cool. I mean, they do have a pretty good team. Then I can understand that. And that's all I be trying to do here on my channel. I'm not delusional. Y'all think I'm delusional because I say delusional. I'm really not delusional. If you take the time to really listen to what I be trying to tell you guys, I'm trying to present a fair balance here. I'm trying to present something fair. If you tell me that they have a Sean Lewis who is very bright, a very bright football head, if they have a Sean Lewis type coach, then I take that into consideration. We can have that conversation. Then I say, okay, fine. But if you're saying that they have a coach, like an offensive coordinator, he only won one game. Maybe he had a friend who gave him a shot, but he went to a Georgia and now he's the offensive coordinator, but he doesn't have the same resume. That's where I have the problem at. Resumes only matter when it comes to other teams, but it doesn't matter when it comes to us. And I'm like, wait a minute, that ain't fair. You see what I'm saying? So it's like, yo, this guy has a winning resume. He's a winner overall, but yet it doesn't matter now. So how do we fare off with UAB, Auburn? Auburn is where Shane Hooks went. I'm not sure. I think that's where Shane Hooks went. Anyways, let me know what you think about this schedule. Is Georgia being let off the hook? And of course, if they're playing subpar teams in 2023, is that an easy path back to the chip game? You know what I'm saying? Back to the national title game. We're looking at this schedule right here. Is this something where you guys can say they're kind of being given a pass? Is this a beast of a schedule? Is this a strong schedule like ours? You guys let me know. I want to extend the conversation outside of Pac-12 because Coach Prime actually wants to win now. So we have to start stretching this conversation outside of that and start looking at other teams. If we had Georgia's schedule, what do you think our record would be? What would be Colorado's record if these were the teams that we were playing? If we meet Georgia in the national title game, I believe that we would be a better matchup with Georgia than TCU was, because that was embarrassing. That game was straight up embarrassing. It was almost like high school versus like NFL. I know that a Coach Prime team would definitely be a really good game. I think these are fair questions that I'm asking. If we can't be in the national conversation, then Coach Prime should not be talking in national championship. But we got to be in the national conversation. I don't want to hear that old talk, you guys can't hang with nobody in the SEC. Like, stop that. Just don't do it. Save your breath. Save your comment. Do not go to the comment with the nonsense of, don't be silly. Like, stop playing with me. This is not that conversation that you want to have. I don't want to have that conversation with you. Be real. Be a real football person. Understand Coach Prime's abilities as a coach, as a motivator, and don't give me that stupid talk about, oh, he's just a motivator, because that's what coaches do. The coach's job is to motivate their generals to go play on the field. That's what they're doing. The coaches are not getting on the field to go play themselves. You understand what I'm saying? Like, the coaches don't get on that field and go run. If they did, then Coach Prime will win every game because he is that dude, right? Lined up Nick Saban against Coach Prime. Lined up Kirby Smart against Coach Prime. If it was a coach's game, then line them up against Coach Prime. Then we win the national championship. Game over. We already know that. Y'all know that, right? That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about, it's like this conversation that we have, right? Tell me how smart you are without telling me that you're smart. That new thing that they're doing online. Tell me why I should be a Christian and don't use the Bible. Or prove to me that Jesus existed, but you cannot use the Bible. How can you say Coach Prime is a good motivator, but he's not a good coach? A good coach is a great motivator. That's what they do. They are motivators. If the coach is a motivator, that's like the biggest part of his job, to be a motivational factor for the kids that are going to go play on that field. And then you come to X's and O's. If the X's and O's is not his thing, then what is? He is football, right? The argument is silly at best because you're thinking like he breeds football. He is football. If we take out motivation, if you're going to detract from the guy, just be a detractor, but tell the truth. Let it be sensical. Let it make sense. He understands it because he's been the one that was being recruited. That means he's a player. So he's been coached. He's been coached all his life, right? All the way from high school, college in Florida State, and then in the pros. There can't be anybody that knows X's and O's better than Coach Prime because he was coached as an X's and O's. He was the guy that was being recruited. He's the guy that's done the recruiting, right? And then he's been the parent. He's sat in the seat of being the parent whose kids were being recruited. So he knows X's and O's. So that's a silly argument. We take that off the table. If you take everything off the table, what do you have left? He's a man of God. He's a Christian man. His values, his discipline. There's nobody more disciplined. For people say he doesn't respect the game. I love this part. The part that when people say he doesn't respect the game, he only cares for himself. He doesn't respect the game. Look at how they carry themselves. The level of discipline that this guy carries is unmatched. If he doesn't respect the game, that's another one that can be laughed at. What else is there? You don't know football if you don't think Coach Prime has more respect for the game than a lot of these coaches. Because respect for the games means you have to employ the discipline that it takes to be at the highest level of the game. This is another one. He doesn't care about the kids. He only cares for himself. That one is really laughable because ask any of the players that's played for him. Go ask any of the Jackson State players. This guy is a motivator. He's teaching these kids life lessons that they're going to take into their personal lives, and they're going to live great lives. And they're going to go live outside of football to be great men, because he tells them 95 of you guys are not going to go to the NFL. So I'm here to prepare you for life, for real life. And I'm giving you things that you're going to hold on to when you leave football. You guys are not going to be this same person a couple of years from now. You're going to be different. But it's some of those disciplines that's going to keep you to be a good citizen of our world. We need better citizens of our world. We don't need no more football players. I promise you. If we have better citizens, we'll be better off than football players. I promise you. Coach Prime, his motivational factor is to actually train these kids and get them ready for the real world. And he's also doing that for football. Okay, he doesn't care about the kids. That one is debunked. That's crazy. How many coaches you know can align their personal brand with universities? How many coaches? So you don't know business. That's what it boils down to. Because if you had the opportunity to go work for a company, let's just say you're working for UPS, but you had a personal brand that can align with UPS and they can promote your logo next to their logo, you would jump at that chance to make money while they're promoting themselves. But he can't do that because you say so. He can't do that because you don't think that's right. He can't make money with CU because you don't see how that's beneficial to his personal life. You don't see that. You don't like that. I don't know why you wouldn't like that. If you had that opportunity, will you not take it? Some of these arguments are just, I'll call them at best frivolous. A lot of the arguments are silly. I may be new to this game, but I'm not new to the game. I know enough to know that some of your argument is trash. A lot of your arguments are trash. A lot of y'all really don't know about the game, to tell you the truth. You're not really students of the game. You're just emotional fans of the game. Y'all don't know what a 2-point stance is. Y'all don't know anything about the game. I mean, y'all, a lot of the people who be talking, they don't really know the game. They just saw how Georgia beat a team really bad, and then that's an emotional decision that they're going to make. That's an emotional argument they're going to make. When Georgia catch y'all, they're going to do this. They can't tell you what type of running backs they got, what their fullbacks can do. They can't tell you if this guy was to line up against this guy. They can't tell you why. It's just going to be that argument. The argument is tiring. When you talk to irrational people, they think they're right just because they're right. And that's like, okay, all right. So if you noticed, I've stopped having arguments with those people. Like every now and then I'm going to have to get at somebody's head because I just get tired of hearing them talk. You keep ignoring them, and then you're just going to have to just say something to them just to kind of get them off your back. So every now and then you'll see me do that. But you notice I don't really say that much to y'all no more. But anyways, I'm going to leave it there, guys. Let me know how you think we fare off with these teams on both 2023 and 2024. I want to have a real conversation because I think we can take them. You know who I am. I'm Harry B. And what you just heard right there was the Liberian Perspective. TLP Sports Club. Brrrah.